So you might have come across this video either from watching my short film that I uploaded recently, or maybe just searching about filmmaking in general. So I wanted to speak a little bit about my experience making my short film, and shed a little bit of insight for anyone who's interested. So I've actually got my notes from little journal entries from making the film. It was a uni film, and so this was one of the assignments, but I thought it could be interesting to just revisit them. And I haven't read these, so this is a bit off the cuff. So day one of directing the film, and if you haven't seen it, it's up on my channel, so I recommend taking a look at it. Day one, we went straight into shooting the intimacy scene, which was a challenge, to be honest, but it was something that we discussed prior to the shoot. It was something that we definitely wanted to get right, especially with all of the conversation that's happening about intimacy in films. I would say my tips for something like this is only write it into the film in the first place for the right reasons, and then if you are writing it in, you have to come to the realization sooner or later that this scene is going to have to be played out with real actors, real people. It's no longer just on the page, and so part of that process is figuring out ways to communicate between the actors, making sure that everyone's comfortable. So I said in the journal entry, strong communication meant that the actors felt safe and secure, and part of this communication is something that we did called a body scan, where the actors go through the parts of their body and saying whether they're safe or not safe for the other actor to be touching throughout the scene, because when you're in the scene you can't communicate, you're in acting mode, so it's really important to hit all of that stuff prior to shooting so that you don't need to cut the camera halfway through. So that was something that one of the actors actually brought to me as the director as a technique. We totally put it on board, and totally would be something that I would do again if I were shooting another scene similar to this. So the other great thing about the way that we shot this scene is that it didn't require both of them in the same room at the same time, and we had minimal crew in the room as well, so it was really just the director of photography, who was a male, and the first assistant director, who was a female, and I was outside of the room looking at the feed, and I would come in at the end and just check on everyone. And I didn't really want to give too many strong notes about this scene, just really wanted to make sure that everyone felt comfortable. So we shot the scene with minimal crew. I was watching the split from the outside, and also the actors had authority to start and end the scene on their own terms. So they would say, I'm ready to go, and they would cut it as well, because this something feels a little bit like the director has too much power, at least to me, demanding action here, cut here, work on my time sort of thing. I wanted to put control more in their hands, so that they could have control over the start and stop of the takes. That was pretty much what I wrote for day one. So day two, it was quite a trial by fire shoot now that I'm reading back on it. Day one, intimacy scene. Day two, fight scene. So this was between our two main characters. We blocked it out and we did a rehearsal previously, which really came in handy. And the rehearsal was about figuring out who's going to be putting pressure. And there was a trick, and I'm going to see if I can remember it, about say if you are pushing against someone, you want the person who's receiving the impact to be almost pulling them forward and guiding the impact, and the aggressor, the attacker, is really just putting on very light pressure. So the person who's taking the blow is the one who's guiding, essentially. And that looks totally fine on camera. I don't think you can tell, and the edit cuts around all of the parts. So that was, again, prioritizing the actors, how they feel, their safety on set, and then you can work around that in the edit. With the fight scene and the intimacy scene, we didn't have the budget, unfortunately, to get a stunt coordinator or an intimacy coordinator. If you have the budget, I highly recommend getting either of those, both of those. But yeah, we just worked on terms of as strong communication as we could possibly do throughout. The difficulty in this scene was keeping it fresh as we moved to various angles. It's not something that strikes me in my memory. I remember we were shooting for quite some time. We were shooting for quite some time, and I think the energy was something that I was struggling to maintain as a director, because you have generally a couple of takes of warming up, and then a couple of takes where it's loose enough, where there's a bit of spontaneity, but the actors are also feeling really comfortable with their rehearsals. And then after a handful more takes, then it starts to tighten up, because the actors generally figure out what's working and they dial into that. And it obviously depends on the type of scene, the actors, the action. But I think we were doing quite a few takes around the place, and it got to the point where it was starting to become a bit rigid. The final direction we landed on was for Max to slow things down as much as possible, and for Adam to do the opposite. So that's about giving direction that the actors can use against each other, I guess, is the thing. It's generating a little bit of conflict, spontaneous conflict in the moment, and physical as well. So if Max, one of the characters, is trying to, slow things down, trying to calm him down as much as possible, and for Adam to sort of try to speed things up as much as possible, I think that worked for them, to sort of play with each other and freshen things up a little bit. This created tension between the two and forced them to read each other, creating an intense scene. Surprisingly difficult was the Uber scene that came after this, where both characters have minimal lines. This is just after they have exited the club and are heading to Max's house. This scene contains important internal revelation for Max, which I was struggling to get to a point where it felt like it was justified to make the taxi pull over and halt the night. The solution was to suggest them to mentally bring up the non-present character Lucy into the scene. What I remember of this scene, despite my dodgy directing notes, was the logistics of shooting in the car. It was hot because there were, I think, at least one of us in each seat, and the AC wasn't on because that makes noise. I think I was sort of holding the camera, and our DOP was just watching the feed in a trailing car, if I'm remembering correctly. And yeah, it was just doing that over and over again was exhausting after a while. And so I think you do things as a director to mix things up a little bit, And so I think my note was sort of say the lines as a your motivation is to get out of this situation so that you can make it straight with the other character, Lucy, who you feel like you owe one. And I think that probably worked. Just clarifying the motivation is always a good directing technique. Or giving an opposite motivation as well is always interesting. Whether it's better or worse, different is generally a good thing, because you can always have that as a reference point and move on to something else. Day 3, the bathroom scene, was challenging on multiple fronts. It was the first scene I directed with extras, which added another layer of challenge to the blocking. Giving the extras precise timings and actions was key to making it work. And I remember this was Max coming out, the camera coming around. There was an extra that passes in front, maybe another one that passes behind. It's been a while since I've even watched that scene. And it's just giving, a second count. You come out this many seconds after action, you come out after this many seconds, so that there's a flow to the scene. No one's bumping into each other. Makes it feel chaotic, but it's also organized at the same time. The performance of this scene took the longest to develop so far. The character intentions had to be precise to preserve the correct tone of the interaction. That's again motivation, clarifying that. I remember that there was a bit of experimentation when it came to the character's motivations. It took a while for me to dial into what was happening, what each of the characters wanted in that scene, and that's the experience of directing your first film. You always think everything about the script, but when you're shooting it for real, it always challenges how much you think you know about it, and that's why trying opposites is always really interesting. I think we did that on the day. By that I mean you're walking into the scene and all you really want is a drink from this shop, because you're really thirsty. A total opposite could be all you really want is to get out of the shop as fast as possible, because it smells terrible. The example in the scene probably made a little bit more sense. I can't specifically remember what each of them wanted in that scene. Max wanted, the protagonist wanted something about being comforted because he's in this heightened state. He's taken a couple of drugs, and Adam wanted a little bit more from him than that. So it was playing around with those expectations, I think. What else? The second scene of the day was in the alley next to the club. And it was awesome. We had this whole club to ourselves, basically, for the day, and the technicians were in there, and we had a bunch of extras. That was where the majority of our budget went to, and it was totally, no regrets for doing that. Some extras idling in the background. Thank you to all of my friends who were idling in the background for hours at a time. Your friends never really realize what they're committing to when they sign up. At least mine didn't, I don't think, realize what they were committing to when they signed up for it. It was a simple scene, but I noticed that an interaction that occurs in the scene is very similar in tone to how the two actors interact with each other regularly. Well, that was great. The banter of them when they weren't doing takes was pretty similar to in the takes. So as a director, you have to do very little, and the actors just sort of deliver their lines as they would talk to each other normally. So it's always great if you can cast dynamics that like the people interact in real life. It was essential to dial in the energy level of the entry into the scene as they're coming straight from the dance floor. But after that, the scene flowed naturally with little direction. Due to some physical interaction, we found it good practice for the actors to scan their safe zones again. Physical touch, and throughout the shooting of the scene, and took the blocking slowly, building up the pace of the full take. So yeah, when you can, always break it down. Take things slowly. You're never in as much of a rush as it feels like, I think is the advice with that. And it's never worth sacrificing the comfort of your actors, or your crew, especially doing a short film with little budget. Everyone's volunteering their time. Make it a nice place for everyone to hang out in. The first scene that we shot today was in a booth. Okay, we're ducking back a little bit. As Max and Adam are taking a break from the dance floor, I spoke to our actor Max, about how he would approach a sense of disorientation as a character is overwhelmed by the drugs he took earlier. He delegated himself some tasks to achieve throughout the scene, which proved to him to get him out of his head, yet with the appearance of self-consciousness. So it's about he needed to look sort of glazed over, but also hyperactive at the same time, and that's not a very specific direction. If I said to you, can you look glazed and hyperactive at the same time? I don't know how I would do that personally, but he gave himself a couple of things to do. I don't know what they were, whether it's like adding up numbers or like trying to find all of the red objects in the room, saying the alphabet backwards. It sort of took him out, which worked really well for the scene. So that's just finding a creative physical task. I think that's always the best, when you can find a physical task for someone to do rather than an intellectualization of how they should be acting. Scene 2 of today was the one we were looking forward to from the start. With over 20 extras, we were able to fill out the dance floor at Rubik's, the club that we were shooting at. And with the help of the in-house lighting technician, we created some dizzying club visuals. I had prepared a USB full of visuals that I'd made in After Effects, which we were able to put on the LED screens, and some copyright-cleared MP3s that we got from local DJs to play so that the extras could dance to some actual music. The scene had the music played over the top in the edit, so it worked perfectly. Nothing needed to sync up like a music video. It was a thrilling experience to dip in and out of the smoke and lights, directing the scene as our actors danced amid the sea of extras. Yeah, it was really fun. It was a great scene. Good turnout. Since this was a uni project, we managed to rope in a lot of people that just wanted to learn about the process, and I don't know if they learnt that much about the process dancing this scene over and over again, but it was fun. It was a good environment. Always try to make it fun for the people that are there. Try to include everyone, I think, if they're giving up your time. I've been on a couple of sets that I didn't feel like my time was not at uni, but a couple of other sets that I didn't feel like my time was really being respected as a volunteer. So I always try to do that to others that are volunteering their time. Get your catering good. If there's good catering, people are very happy. It's a cliche, but it's important. Day 5, shooting on the train, was likely the most challenging day so far. I feel like I've said that for all of the days so far. We had a skeleton crew, so this meant personally I had to mentally be across more logistics than the other days, especially since the train was such an unpredictable shooting environment. We kept on getting bumped around way more than we had anticipated. The first carriage that we got on was too packed. We had permits to do this, by the way. Don't try to just hop on the train. You might not get kicked off, you might be fine, but it's always safer to get your permits. So we got on a really packed train and they just did rehearsals on that. It's really embarrassing. For me personally, not someone who's comfortable with playing make-believe in front of a packed train carriage, but I did it because we were on the clock. The scene flowed quite nicely from the start, and with some minor adjustments we were off and running. I did notice that due to the uncertain environment, it was a lot harder to find a comfortable directing headspace. Yeah, because I was just focusing on so much other stuff at the same time, like what stop we were at, or we would get on one carriage, then another carriage, and we'd have to match up the background so that we could cut the takes together, and we didn't know what side we were on or which way the train was going. So that was tough. And the more people you can have take the cognitive load off, the better. But that one was just out of necessity. We had to do it with only a couple of people. The track was bumpy, the noise in the background was harsh, and the lighting was tough as well, because the lights on the train are just the worst. Fortunately, as it got later in the night, the trains were less busy and we were more confident with the scene. Given the circumstances, I'm happy with what we got on day 5. It was a tough scene to shoot, and it was tough to cut together because all of the takes were slightly different. It's a learning experience doing stuff like that, I think. Editing notes, finally. That was the last of our shooting days. It feels good to finally be picking selects. So it was 5 days isn't a lot, but it feels like a lot. It's exhausting to put it all out there for 5 days in a row. It's definitely a muscle that you need to build up. I've been on a feature set not consecutively every day of the whole set, but they were going for weeks, and I know the director was knackered by the end. So build up the muscle, do the micro shorts, then the shorts, and then build it up from there. I am comforted in the fact that it's looking like all of our scenes are cutting together with no issues. We did do a little bit of swapping scenes around, which was cool to see how it really dramatically affected the pace and the messaging. My process with my editor has been to provide detailed notes on the clips that I like and the reasons why, for her to put together an assembly cut in her own time. This is how she works the best. Communication is the common theme. It's good to be able to reflect on what came across, what worked from the shoot and what didn't translate. And that's the thing. This was my first sort of big narrative project, and so figuring out when the direction works, when the direction doesn't. I'm more and more these days of the school that the simpler the direction you can give, the better. Don't try to contrive the scene, just have a really good understanding of your script, a really good understanding of your characters. Characters are really the most important thing the thing that the audience attaches themselves to, and the journey of the characters is what tells the story. So really understand your characters, and then the direction will be easy if you're directing your own script. I believe that developing the performance throughout the shooting will give us lots of variety of material to work with the most refined performances in the close-ups. Don't know what that means. I think maybe I'm talking about workshopping the performance, going from the wides at the start to the close-ups at the end. The close-ups, you really want the expressions dialed in. I know it's obvious, but starting it in the wide gives you a little bit more freedom. And I think the actors as well, and not having to deal with the camera being so close to their face as well, makes them a little less self-conscious. So always going from wide to close, I think is a good method. Seeing the assembly cut, I'm happy with how close the film is to my initial intentions. There's still a lot of refining to do, but the bones are in place and I'm feeling confident. Everything that feels not quite right is, I believe, workable with the footage that we have. The character of Adam was coming across a little aggressive, but that was totally, something that can be tweaked. There's so much that you can do with editing. You can patch up some shoddy directing, is what I've learned in the edit. Likewise, I am quietly confident about the rough cut, and then I think that's the end of my notes. So that was basically a brief overview of my experience. I hope it was useful. My advice is to work with the school of available materials, work with what you have, and then slowly build up your resources, your available resources that you have access to match the scale of your ideas. So one shot that we took was the nightclub, and there were a couple of locations that took a little bit of work to secure. I think the amount of locations that we did was just enough to be manageable, maybe a little bit too much. I'd go simpler if I were shooting another one. And the pace was quite fast, cutting between the different locations. So I think, for the next short film, I'm really going to focus on just working with what I have readily available. And I think that's important for anyone who's looking to shoot a film, shoot it on a phone, shoot it on whatever's the easiest, minimize the friction in getting to making it, I think. And other than that, I'm going to be posting here occasionally about my experiments, new technologies. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening with film technologies. A lot of people are nervous about how it's going, but I'm seeing a lot of possibilities in how things are developing. So stay tuned for that. More about film and philosophy. I touched on it a little bit here with my sort of filmmaking and directing philosophy, but definitely more of that to come, and more short films as well. So thank you for watching.